everyone has had success in opening up Lightwave and both the modeler and Lightwave itself, which is establish our scenes. Yes, no problems. And everybody knows the username and password, obviously, for Lightwave, you got that. Looking at the window here. Okay. Went over this really quickly last time. Default quad setup in modeler. I'm looking at modeler right now. If I were to switch and switch to layout or Lightwave, you typically see a single view. It's just, these are just little box settings. This is fun. There we go. And I'm going to I can always reconfigure this by clicking in the middle and resizing these. If I get lost at any time, for example, if I come in here and I use this tool to move around, notice that all views are moved. When I get lost at A, that brings me back. But really, I'm sort of getting ahead, because when I look at this, and I have the Create tab selected, remember this is where our modeling tools exist. These series of tools should drop all the way down to about here. So there's a bunch that are missing. It's not seeing the plugins. So does anybody remember what I need to do?
Yeah. You went to Utilities.
Okay.
And edit plugins.
Correct.
And Scan Directory. Correct.
This is important. When you're at home, you're not going to have to do this if you choose to buy. This has to do with why, how it's set up here. Now this is where it gets a little fuzzy. You go to the hard drive. That's general. That's the big hard drive. Now within that, there are folders in the hard drive, right? Well, I want to go into Applications. And within the Applications folder, there will be New Tech, Lightwave 8, and that's what I'm running. Make sure you're running 8, not 9. And the reason is that if you're running 9, it will wind up being limited edition, because they don't have the dongles plugged in. So select 8, and then within 8, where it says Plugins, just select that folder once. You don't have to select anything in here. Just click on the folder once, and then click Open. Wait a couple of seconds, and a little window should pop up here. It says 524 plugins found and 231 files. Notice how many more were added. And as soon as I select Done, you notice a couple more were added here, but more importantly, when I go back to Create, see how many more I have available to me here. So you're really working with one arm tied behind your back when you don't have all the tools that available to you. So that you're going to have to check for.
After we get into the plugins folder, then we take
you don't get into it. You just select the folder and then click OK. All you're doing is reestablishing the link to that folder for Lightwave. Lightwave has to know what path, where to find those in order to open them. That's all you're doing.
And after you have it onto the edit plugins window, then you just hit Done.
After it's added it? Yeah, then you select Done. And that's it. You notice a couple more were automatically added. Now when you go back to Create, notice all the tools you have available to you. Unfortunately, that's something you have to do in here at home. As I said, it's not an issue. Shouldn't be. This program is infinitely customized. It can be customized to suit your case. I would prefer, as I mentioned last week, that you work with quad panel for starters. But if you do choose to change, and you can easily, the easiest way to get to that place is hit D on the keyboard. D for display. Remember that D is in dog? And this comes up. And you have display options. So if we look at layout, you'll notice by default the quad layout is here. But some people prefer, for example, they like one top and three bottom. So they have their back, top and right views down here, and then their perspective view is at the top. It's all a matter of taste, all a matter of how you like to work. There are a number of other presets or ways that we can customize this. What I would like you to do, though, is under viewports. Well, let me go back. Let me go back to layout, and I'm going to switch back to quad view, because that, as I said, is the one that I want everybody to work with. Let me jump ahead a little bit. Backdrops. If you want a backdrop in here, we can bring one in, and we will later on to use that as a guide for tracing or building a model. So you have some sort of reference material. The interface, if you're using a Wacom tablet, we can select different features for that. The units you can change by default. Right now it's at the standard, which is actually in metric. It's in meters. That's the default unit, and that's fine. You can leave it that way. If you would rather have it in English in inches and feet or things like that, you can change it. But again, just leaving it in the standard default settings is just fine for us. If we go back to viewports, though, this is what I would prefer that you do. I'll show you why. But remember, if I were to come over here and make a box, when I zoom in or when I move, especially when I zoom in on any one of these three viewports, or even here in the perspective, they all zoom in and out. For the top, front or back, and right, that's useful so that you see all three of those views at the same scale so you don't get lost. It really helps your point of reference if you do that. But I prefer to leave the perspective view as a separate entity. It's by itself. Does that make sense? So you can do that. We can have all of these independent of one another, but I prefer to work with just one of them being independent, where it scales differently from the rest. To do that, we go back to display, look at viewports, and I want to affect the top right. Now, it has independent rotation because that's the only one you can rotate. It's in perspective. You can't rotate the front, top, or right. That doesn't work. But what I want is independent zoom for it. Okay? Now when I click OK, let's say I'm done building my box, and I zoom in over here, notice that these three views zoom in and out, but my perspective view remains constant. It's really independent, it's separate. It's just a way of working, one that I find works pretty nice. Does anybody remember what else I did? What are some added features that we can have at our disposal to help us build our objects? Does anybody remember?
So statistics.
Yeah, and the numeric requester. Now, we're down here. I can see them there. Okay. Numeric requester is here. Statistics panel is here too. And these little buttons, they toggle on and off. These are additional little panels and tools. Numeric 2, when you close these are a fairly recent addition. I mean, they didn't exist in 6 and 7. But you hit N for numeric, and you hit double for statistics, they pop up. I like having these up at all times. again, it's just my preference, my way of working, and I think it will benefit you too. So, to avoid having this cover up some of my models, what I will do is in the lower right-hand corner, see the little tab? I click and I drag and I pull it over, like so. So I have a little bit less space here, but now I'll go ahead and I have room to put my numeric requester up in the right-hand corner and my points down. So it makes these windows a little smaller, but because we're working with a 21-inch monitor, it's plenty big. Now, at any time, that's why I like the quad view, is that if I only want to see one view, if I only want to see the back view, if I only want to see the top, or only the perspective view, just like when we're in layout, that you want to focus on just that view and nothing else, it's very simple. You can either use the tabs up here, but it's probably even easier if you hit the 0 key on your numeric type tab, and wherever your cursor is, whichever quadrant it's hovering over, that's the one that it will zoom in and just focus on that. So it's easy just to hit the 0 key and to zoom in on just any one of those quadrants. Does that make sense? Everybody's nodding. Some people are nodding. Everybody wait. Ready to go. Are you somewhat feeling, I mean, I know it's very awkward right now to work in this environment. It's not like other computer programs. I'm not used to this. It's very, very different. Well, what I want to do now is that, and if you want to follow along with me, you can. And I'll try to go slow, and if I'm going too quickly or if I'm going too slowly, let me know. Just say, hey, you can speed it up, or whoa, 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 stop a minute, I need to catch up, I'm having problems. Just blurt it out. This isn't high school, this is another class. Just let me know so that we can all be on the same page. I don't know if you recall, but last week when I was giving an overview, I mentioned that when we're working with primitives, they're presets. What they're doing is that they're models that are still, you could build a box point by point if you wanted to, polygon by polygon, and that's what I want to focus on today, or what these elements are comprised of, and how you can manipulate them, and how you can change them at will, so that you can start with a box, but when you're done, you can end up with any number of things. It's amazing what you can do with this. And it's that kind of mindset that I want you to get into, that the more of this you do, the more of this, the little videos that you watch, the more of me that you watch, you'll begin to see that, oh, if I try this, I can start with something very simple, but I can go off on a tangent and do something very complex and go in another direction. So, for example, to be able to select the polygons, and it takes minimum, at least for our purposes, minimum of 3 points to create a polygon. Remember, if you think of back to high school and basic geometry, 1 point in space is just a tiny little, it's just that, it's a point in space. To create a line in space, you need 2 points. To create a plane, you need 3 points, right? You need 3 points to create that plane. And that's what you're looking at. A cube is comprised of 6 planes, correct? We can select them independently of one another. We can delete them. We can modify them. We can do all sorts of things. To be able to select each individual plane in here, at the bottom, you'll notice that we have several buttons right where I selected the numeric requester and statistics. By default, it's set to points. I'm going to select polygons. We also have a symmetry mode, and you need to be careful. That can really be your friend or it can be your enemy if it's selected by mistake. Right now, make sure that it is not selected. With polygons selected, I can select any number of polygons here because there are only 3 visible. I can select 3 at any one given time. And to do that, there's a couple of ways to do this. If I click and drag, as I move the mouse over each of these polygons, they are highlighted. Does everybody see that? These are selected now. Now if I were to rotate and view the other 3, and try to select those and drag, it doesn't work. So to add to that selection count, I have to hold down the Shift key. And now by holding down the Shift key, I can click and drag and highlight those as well. So that's one way to do that. To deselect, if no other tool is selected, I mean, there's a couple ways to do this. I can move over to the lower left-hand corner in a blank area, and I can click, and they're all deselected. Another way to do it, so if I select these like so, is just simply move back on top of them with the mouse and click and drag, and they will deselect. Similarly, if you want to select the points on here, and there are 8 points, everywhere you see a little corner, you'll see the points. If you're not sure where the points are, sometimes there'll be many more than what you realize that there are. And instead of viewing this in flat shaded, if we view this in texture wireframe, so we see the texture, we also see the underlying wireframe, and where all of these lines join in each corner, there is a point that defines. So now if I want to select points, instead of polygons, I select the point tab, and now similarly I can click and drag over each corner and select the point. You notice I can't select the back point back here, so I release the mouse, I spin it around, and what do I have to do to select this one now? Hold down the Shift key, and that allows me to add and select the point. So why would you want to select just one polygon or multiple polygons or one point or multiple points? Oftentimes, for example, maybe I want to create a shape that starts as a cube, but when I'm done, it looks pretty different. It looks maybe almost like a trapezoid type of shape. I'm not sure what they're called when they're tapered. It's almost like a pyramid with the top cut out. It isn't. So if I switch back to polygons, I could have used points too, but if I select just the top polygon, and then I select my modification tools, so maybe I just want to resize that polygon, but because this polygon is connected to these other 4, watch what happens when I move it. If I click from over here and I move it, notice that it resizes it based on my mouse placement. Notice that it shifts over to where my mouse was. Now, if that's what you want, and you want it skewed off to one side, so be it. But I want it to remain even and symmetrical. Remember from the other day what I have to do in order to do that? To make it. I come down here to the bottom where it says Modes, and I click. Let me move this up so you can see this. Where it says Modes, I want my action center to be not where my mouse placement is, but I would rather that my action center be to the center of the selection. And notice that there are 3 others: action center origin, action center where the pivot point is, and action center selection. So if I select selection, and I come back here, it doesn't matter where my mouse is. When I click and drag left, right, left, notice that it expands or it contracts, or enlarges or is reduced in size, but it's based from that center of its origin, its location. And now I have a little pyramid shape with the top cut. So that would be an easy way to build one, just by selecting one polygon, changing the mode, and using the size tool to select and just resize that, because these polygons are connected to this, they will be reconfigured as well.
Or did you get the action selection?
Say again, I'm sorry.
The action selection. Select.
Down here at the bottom under modes, I want action center to be the selection.
All right.
So from time to time, you'll have to toggle back and forth. It could be where the mouse is, it could be where you want it in the center of the selection, maybe where the pivot point is of the object, so on and so forth. Yeah.
So you start, when you did that, you just pick the top.
Just pick the top. And similarly, when I have something turned up on the sides, you have to have all turned. What if I were to switch to points and I just select one point? Well, watch what happens when I move just one point. It's as if this is constructed of rubber, and the whole thing reconfigures fit how you move it. Now I don't have to move. I don't have to move it in perspective view. I can also move it, and this is also the tricky part. Which view do you use to move it? And it really depends on how you want this placed. Oftentimes when you move things or resize them in perspective view, you can run into problems. If I want to make sure that this is moved maybe right over to the center, it would be best if I looked at the top view and I moved it. And now notice what this looks like. Very different kind of shape, huh?
How did you activate that? And you chose points to designate that corner. How did you?
I chose, yeah, deselect. I selected a point, make sure that it had points selected here, and just clicked on one point. And you can see it highlighted. Now with that one point selected, if I use any modification tool, meaning if I want to rotate and want to move it, scale, whatever, I can't really scale a point, I'm just going to move it. Now I can go ahead and move this over. But notice that when I move this one point, especially from perspective view, it's kind of hard to get it back to that center the way I did it. Notice that it moves it up. I didn't want it up. I just wanted to move it, slide it along, so now it was in the center of my selection. Move it back. So.
Lightwave give you handles, so you can move it like X, Y, or Z. Does Lightwave give you handles, so you can move it like the point is X, Y, or Z, or is it just all three like that?
It's not really. It's yes and no. It's better if you just move over the proper quadrant. So, for example, if I want to move this up to Y, then move to the back or the right view, and then I know I can move up or down. And if I hold down the control key as I do that, it will lock it in. It should lock. It's supposed to lock it in. So that it just slides along that view. So remember, if I move it along the top view, I'm moving it along the XZ coordinates. If I'm moving it along the back or front view, I'm sliding it along the Y or X coordinates. If I'm on the right view, then I'm sliding this point along the Z or Y view. And every time I move it, especially if you let the windows inside out, you can do some pretty wonky things too. Give this a try, just so you feel comfortable moving, manipulating, selecting, deselecting, undoing. Okay, I just want to focus on polygons today and primitives, and that's it. Again, when you select, I mean, I can at least go through each of these. So you will see, if I select a box, I have two ways to work. I can either click and drag on each of the coordinates and stretch it and build it the way I want it, or I can use my numeric requester to build the box. If I wish to start with a default setting of 1 by 1 by 1 meter, then I would go to the numeric requester, actions, select reset, then actions activate, and it automatically builds a box for me. It's 1 by 1 by 1. And it's set in the middle of my universe. And then when I'm done, if I'm happy with this, remember, you turn off the tool. You select the tool to use it. When you're done with it, you turn it off. Now it's fixed. It's done.
Get rid of the black ones.
Command Apple X, which is the cut.
Oh, okay. How do you select the?
Did.
Oh, okay.
Remember, if nothing is selected, everything is selected. There was only one item on there. So if I had multiple items, they would have all gone away.
Okay, in that instance, how do you select?
There's a variety of ways. You can do like I just did here, but if I were to go back and select all the polygons, that would be the way of doing it.
Oh, okay.
Or, if I select one polygon, I can go to View, and I can say Select Connected. It's right here, Selection Connected, and it will select all the polygons that are connected to that one. And that's especially helpful when you have a ball or something, when you have lots and lots of polygons to select. Yeah, so to delete, many of the key commands are pretty much the same. You know, Command S to save, Command X to cut, Command C to copy. Everybody know those? They're pretty standard from program to program. On the Macintosh, Command key is the Apple. Probably the only difference would be on the PC is that you would hit Control instead of Command. So remember, if nothing is selected, everything is selected. So if I were to resize this, the whole thing resizes uniformly. If I only select one or I select two polygons, only those will be the ones that are changed. Just like,
Is there any way you could add points that change? Or is it kind of
yeah, it's not. In 9, it's much easier. It's harder to add points here. It can be done, and there are only certain times that you can do it. You can't just right along the edge here add a point along here.
so to make more like complex shapes?
Yeah, there's different ways of doing it, better ways of doing it. And when we get to that, we will. I would use the select one and use the bevel tool, and I can add polygons. You can build. It's almost like Legos, building blocks. So yes, you can do that. And there's ways of slicing these up and adding points and a number of different ways of doing it. I just want everybody to feel comfortable doing basic things.
And could you merge shapes too?
Yep, you can merge them. There's a whole bunch of ways of doing it. There's other tools for that. The Boolean tools for that. So, other ways to build. Let's select the box tool. I can click and drag from in any direction. Notice that it builds a box for me. If I click in the center and drag, it will allow me to move it. And notice that it's aligned in the back view, but it's not centered in the top view until I move from that view, and similarly with the right. You'll also notice the little widgets on the corners and the sides that if I click and I drag, it allows me to stretch and to continue to build and resize this. And as I stretch and resize it, you'll notice that the dimensions are visible in my numeric request view. And I like that. If I want, I can always go back to reset, and it takes it back to 1 by 1 by 1, and I can either resize by using the little blue widgets by clicking with the left mouse button, or I can use the spinners, which is what these are. If I decide here that I want a depth of 2 meters, I can click and drag here and to the right, and you'll notice that it's changing. It's now resizing it so that it's 2 meters. Okay? So you can use a combination. You can use one, the other, or both. And that is true for all the tools. For all, pretty much all of our primitive building tools. And watch. If you want to start with a basic two-dimensional plane, depending on which view you want to view it, click and drag, and it's just that. It's a two-dimensional plane. You notice that I'll talk in a few minutes about why you only see one side and not the other. And that can be deceiving. You think it's gone, and it's not. It's there. But if I wanted to build a wall, and I don't see the other side of the wall, why do I want to build a box? Maybe I only need to build a plane. If I'm building a floor, and I'm not doing a cutaway or anything like that, maybe I only need to build a two-dimensional plane. I don't need any more than that. So, wall, again, if you build this, if you use the numeric requester and you select reset and activate, it automatically gives you a sphere. Notice that the sphere is comprised of 24 sides and 12 segments. We can change this. We can also reorient the sphere to the X, Y, or Z axis. Notice that the sphere is comprised of these little squares. Those are all polygons. Just like the cube was comprised of 6 polygons, this is comprised of a bunch. I don't know, what's 12 times 24, quite a few. I guess when I'm done, it'll be 200. Let me fix it, and then I can tell you. Because that's why the statistical panel is up here. All we have to do is look at polygons, and it's 288. It tells us right there. Also, if I go back to actions and activate, watch what happens when I reduce the number of sides. And I really reduce it down to maybe 5 sides, 4 sides, 3 sides. Look at how different that shape appears. You never think that a wall would turn into that if you reduce the number of sides, right? Same with segments. If I increase the segments, see how much smoother it appears? If I reduce the segments, look at how different it is. Again, when you ever think of creating this shape, this form, using a ball, it's only by playing with this that you get a sense of what you can build with it. If you would rather have the cube built of 3-pointed polygons, you can select tessellation. So it looks like sort of, oh shoot, let's see. Everybody remember the guy's name? Disney. Epcot. Oh man, I'm drawing a line. I'll think of it. In terms of how much geometry you need for a sphere or a box or whatever, try to use the minimum amount. But there are times when you will need more because we can turn on smoothing later on. But oftentimes, maybe this sphere was going to become a moon or it was going to become a planet or something like that, and you were going to zoom in and see great details. You would begin to see these facets. It wouldn't look nice and round. It would look like it was built of little squares. So you might want to add way more sides and way more segments. On the other hand, if this is going to be a tiny little item that sits in the back somewhere and you really don't notice it, then just use the minimum number of polygons and turn on smoothing, and that would be added. Because the more polygons that you do add, the higher the polygon count, the longer it will take to render. Remember what we did when I showed you that step the other day to actually take a snapshot of it and render it. The more polygons, the more time it takes. More lights, more a lot of things, it adds to the time that it takes to render it. Now, what if you wanted just a two-dimensional disk? Similar to the rectangle, if I just click and drag on one of the planes, look what I have. I have a two-dimensional disk, and that's it. Similarly, if I select disk, if I click and I drag on any one of the planes, I have a disk, and watch what happens when I click here and I pull it out. That's how you build your cylinders. If I go back to Actions, Reset, you'll see what I have. And again, you can control the orientation from here if you wish. Whether you want it aligned along the y-axis, X or Z. Number of sides determines how complex you want it to be, how many polygons. Number of segments we'll get to later. And again, if I want to use that as a starting point, I'm creating a column and I want a nice big column like so. I can use my numeric requester as a starting point and build. So you can, to create a disk, you can use the ball or you can use the disk tool, which is really for cylinders. Cone is just what you think. You can also build disks from this. But when I click and I drag from the top, I have a cone. Capsule is, it's, you know, like a little pill. So look at here with zoom. This can be useful for a variety of things. I don't use it that much. It's considered a primitive. And then there are more down here. My favorite one is, of course, Homer Simpson. No. You want to make gears, gemstones, which are pretty cool. Wedges. Let me try the gemstone. And you can control the gemstone, control the symmetry, the crown, the girdle table, pavilion. All of these elements of the gemstone have names to them, and I don't know them all. You just start changing one. What does the crown do? When you change it, oh, that's what that does. That's the crown. The girdle, which is that. table in the pavilion. That's what they- So there's lots of kind of building blocks that you can use, and that's what these primitives are to start your models. And you'd be amazed at what you can build starting with a cube. Especially when we get the organic model, you can build an entire cache, starting with just the basic cube. But we'll use a different set of tools and a different technique. So, the next thing that I want to do is to show you that you can also, notice down at the bottom, that we can build, this one, not the bottom, but about the middle, points. We can build points. So at this point, I just want you to watch for a minute, because I'm going to build a polygon, and I'm going to explain. Remember when I made just a two-dimensional plane, and you could see it on one side, not the other? When you're building three-dimensional forms using primitives, if you were to see the back side of it, you wouldn't see any either. It knows that you're still only looking at the outside, so that it eliminates confusion and reduces rendering time and stuff. It only builds one side. But we can build our own polygons, and we can also delete. There's a variety of things. Let's start by building polygons. Remember, I said you need a minimum of 3 points. So what I'm going to do is select the point tool, and in top view, I'm going to click. And if I click again, notice it just, with the left mouse, notice it just moves it around. Now I'm going to add multiple points. So how do I add those additional points? You either right-click. Notice that I do have 3 now. Or for those of you who have computers here with only a 1-button mouse, you use the command key, and it will allow you. It's equivalent on the Mac to the right click. Okay. So I'm done making my points, but you'll notice when I look at perspective view, I don't see anything. There's just points in space, isn't it? So if I come down to the bottom and points, and I have all these points selected, and I hit P for polygon. Oh, there it is. Notice what it did. It made a polygon. It took those points and it created a plane. And when I look at the bottom, there is nothing. Because by default, all polygons are one-sided. They face only one way. If you're not going to see the bottom, it's not a big deal. There are ways that we'll get to on another day to make two-sided polygons, and there's a number of ways that you can do that. If you ever want to know which way that polygon is facing, switch from points down to polygons, and you'll see that with this selected, see this little line that extends from here? This is called the surface normal, and it tells you what direction the polygon is facing. And when is that important? When we start to create surface textures and apply those surface textures, and we want to know what's going to happen, especially when we start to add other kinds of textures such as bump maps. Bump maps change the surface normal, and even though the geometry isn't changed for the object, it makes the object look bumpy or have an undulating terrain like the field. And it's a smart way to go, so that you have reduce your polygon count, but you can make fairly complex shapes. Now, what if I decide that I want this polygon to be faced the other way? I don't want it facing this way. I want it faced the other way. What we can do is hit F on the keyboard, and that flips it. So now when I look at the bottom, it's facing on the bottom. It's not facing on the top. If I hit F again for flip, it flips the polygon. If I decide that I don't want a polygon anymore, but I want to keep the points, does that make sense? If I hit Command X, it cuts everything, right? But what if I don't want the polygon anymore? What if I want to create a polygon that's 4 or 5 points? And I decided I didn't want to go backwards a little bit. What I can do is I can hit K for kill, and that kills the polygon. But notice here it leaves the points. Now, if we come back to points, and let's add 2 more. Remember, add multiples. I left click on the first one, I right click on the second. Now, you can have a polygon, as I said, that's minimum for our purposes. Minimum 3 points. You can have a slew more points if you want. Many, many more. And depending on what you're doing, determine how many points you will want or you want to avoid. Now, if I want to turn this into a polygon, I have to be very careful. You have to select the points in either a clockwise or counterclockwise fashion. And you cannot miss it. If you do, you have to start over again. Watch what happens. If I start here and I click this one, oops, I make sure that point's selected. And let's deselect. Just to show you. Click here, and click here, and click here, and I click here. I go, oh shoot, I forgot that one. So now select that one. Right? And what key do I hit to turn this into a polygon? P for polygon, right? P. Whoa, that doesn't look like what I thought. Okay? Made a total mess of it. So to back out of it, what key do I hit to kill the polygon? K for kill, right? Whoops, you have points selected. That's why I get that error message. Go back here, it's all messed up. K for kill. That's okay. So now I go back, select points again, deselect them all. Start the process again. It doesn't matter where you start, and it doesn't matter which order you go. You do have to go clockwise or counterclockwise, and you cannot miss it. So if I click this one now, and click this one, and drag on top of them, now I hit P for polygon. I don't see it. Why don't I see it? By going counterclockwise, it caused the polygon to face downward, the first surface one. So to flip that, what do? F for flip. Oh, forgetting what I'm doing here. Go back, select polygons, hit F for flip, and it flips it. Now, another thing that you need to be careful of when you're working with just single polygons, or just flat polygons like this, is that right now, all 5 points lie perfectly on the same plane. Okay? But what if I were to take one of these, okay, 1 point, select it, and let's hit T for move, and we're going to move this up, like so. Because I want it tilted up like this. I want it bent. So I'm done with it. I'm done moving it. Turn off, move, deselect, and I have it bent. And I think everything is okay, but it really is not. Because when you're dealing with a single polygon, it really needs the plane needs to be perfectly flat. But if I want it bent, then really what I need to do is I need to turn this into 2 polygons, not 1. What I have right now is something called a non-planar. And you'll notice as you build your more complex models later on, you're going to end up with a series of non-planars. And when that happens, you're going to have rendering errors, and it will look like there's little holes or little gaps and that sort of thing in your model. And there's a way to correct for that. There's a way to fix it. I only have 1 polygon, so it's a non-issue. But if you had multiple polygons on a model that were non-planars, that you had stretched beyond their normal configuration, that really messed up. There was a tool for that, and that's why we have our point statistics. Is I'm going to switch from points to polygons, and when I look here, and I look down, notice it says non-planars, one. I only have one polygon, and I have one non-planar. And you'll notice that it's selected. Because I had that one polygon selected. What if I had a whole model? And I look down here and it says 5 non-planars, and I want to fix those non-planars. To do that, I come down here and I select them all. And when you click from here, from your statistics panel, it will select all the non-planars. To fix it, you triangulate. So what it will do, it knows mathematically to break this down into smaller configuration, smaller polygons. The one polygon that you can never have a non-planar is one comprised of 3 points, right? You move any one of the points and it still makes a flat plane. As soon as you start with a 4-pointed polygon, you lift one corner and then you get the wobbly table effect. That it sort of teeters and tilts. And that sort of, to fix that, you need to fix the non-planar. So to fix it, and we'll do something called triangulate. For me, it's easier just to memorize the keystroke instead of remember where it is here. Is that if you hit Shift-T, notice what it does. It broke it down into those multiple parts. Now, this isn't how I wanted it to look, so I would have to go in another direction. But this is how it fixed that non-planar.
What did you press again?
Shift-T.
Just a shift?
Shift-T. T is in tiger.
Oh,
Shift-T. Now, you can build a variety of shapes from primitives. For example, what if I started with a little circular shape here? What's the square? What am I talking about? Short circular. Let's start with the square. Okay. And here's my box. Let's take a ball on top of it here, like so. Okay. And I really want a single polygon that combines these two. I can do that pretty easily. To combine these two, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select these points all on my own and delete some points too. But before I can do that, I don't need these polygons anymore. So to delete the polygons but leave the points, what do I need? What do you do to kill a polygon? Pay for kill. Boom. That leaves all the points. Now with points selected, I don't need these guys down here. So I'm going to select these, and I really don't need this one. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key and select this one and this one. I'm good to go there. Now I can hit Command X to cut them. Okay, so I have this group of points, and I have these down here.
Can we do the same thing?
Huh? Yeah. I just cut them. So now I can go ahead.
Oh, I don't know what I did, but in my control Z.
Command Z.
Yeah.
Apple Z.
Oh,
Apple Z.
Yeah, so.
Apple Z undoes Apple X.
Oh, yeah, I think I may have.
If you do Command Z, that's undo, and it will bring back what you last did.
All right.
Command X cuts, Command C copies. So now I can take the points.
What I'm saying is
Sorry,
it
go ahead.
didn't work though.
Go ahead and start from scratch.
I think I may
Just hit.
have done some.
Okay, you have to select polygons. Now hit K for kill. Right?
Right.
Okay, how we just switch? Go ahead, yeah, sometimes wonky. Go ahead and create a new file and see what happens. Same thing. So now what I can do, with points selected, is I can go around clockwise or counterclockwise and select all of these. Right? I'm just clicking and dragging with the left mouse in order, and I'll find out in a minute if I have the wrong order, because it will look pretty wonky. Now to turn this into a polygon, what do I do? E for polygon. There you have it. Now you have your custom shape. And then later on, we'll see that there's other nice tools, multiple tools, multiply tools that maybe we'll want to use. Switch to polygon. Or if I were to use the extrude tool, I can click and drag like so. Now I have a three-dimensional shape. That's one way. So there's a lot that you can do. Think of it like Legos, think of it like Tinker Toys, things like that. With primitives, it sounds silly, but there's a lot that you can do. Just about everything can be built from primitive. In fact, when we get to organic modeling, everything will start off with primitive. Basically, you usually start with a cube. And then we'll use a variety of other tools to be able to build some pretty complex things. Question so far is what I want you to be able to do today. I'm just about done with my cake, but I want to make sure that you know how to build some basic primitives, manipulate them, move them on stage, or here, delete them, modify them, and then also work with some basic polygons. And then what I also want to do, using primitives, is I'm going to build a basic table in length. I'm going to do that and show you today. And then we're going to build one Wednesday, and then after that, we're going to go step by step, and we're going to then start either probably this Wednesday, we'll start building our character from Reboot. You're going to follow along, monkey see, monkey do. So that as we build it and we use our primitives and these are modified tools, you'll see as I build this thing, the process that I'm building. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off, and then I'm going to show you simple steps for building a table in a lamp.
Make it into different
Right. So now, let me turn this on.